I'm going to show you around the CapCut project workspace, the general layout of everything, and then we're going to get into the timeline and look at every single tool that you can use on the timeline, how it's laid out, and what your options are. Let's go. So you've got your preview going on up top here. You've got your timeline down here that's playing through. You've got your assets and things over here. And then properties are on the right. And properties, oh my gosh, do we have properties. Starting on the timeline, let's look at our clip here. There's a couple things about our clip that we should know. So these little dots pop up. If you click on one of those and drag, what you're doing is fading out at that point. You're fading the audio out. All right, let's get into it. If you do it at the beginning, you'll be fading your audio in. So it's a nice, simple way if you need to do a fade. You also see your waveform down here, and this little line, this is your volume that controls the whole clip. So when we drag that all the way up, the volume up to 20 decibels, you can see we've got some orange showing up there, and that's not where we want to be on our audio. We want our audio to really stay to where if it barely licks into that orange just a teensy bit, that's okay, but really just below that, that's the happy spot you want to be in. If I want to edit this, I can tell some things just by looking at this waveform. I can see that there are spots here where I'm not saying anything, where I'm just kind of thinking. So I could come in right away and start cutting out those blank spots. And if I want to zoom in further to make sure I get this really detailed, come over here and hit this plus button over on the far right. That'll zoom in on the timeline. Now you can also do this by holding down the control button on your keyboard for Windows and use your scroll wheel on your mouse. Move it up, that zooms in. Control and use your scroll wheel down or towards you, that will shrink it. So I'm going to stretch it out a good bit here. Go ahead and click right here. I'm going to say right about there, right before that starts. And there's a couple ways that I can do this. I can right click and say split scene. That'll put a cut there. I can also use a keyboard shortcut. And by default, the keyboard shortcut here, I believe, is B. But I have changed mine to S because S is the shortcut in most of the other video programs that I have used and gotten familiar with. You come up here to shortcuts, timeline, the very first one is split, and mine is S. You can change that, whatever it is. Like I said, I think it's B by default, but you can just click in there and change it to whatever you want. So I can just hit S here and it will split. I'm going to do Control Z to undo that. I can also come up here and I've got a little split icon. Or I can say delete left, click that, and boom, it took care of everything that was to the left of where the playhead was. Playhead's a super important component of any timeline. This is where you're at. This is your mark, your point, your center of the universe, so to speak. So let me come over here. I'm going to come on the right side of this, and I'm there. I'm just going to hit the S, and that will split it. Now, if I come over here to where my next talking starts to happen, and I can click this delete left. I don't want to keep having to move my mouse all the way back over here and click buttons and whatnot. So I use a keyboard shortcut for this as well. Actually, in my case, I have these keyboard shortcuts set up in my Stream Deck. And so that allows me to keep one hand over on my Stream Deck, one hand on my mouse, and I can just push the button on my Stream Deck to delete left, which is the same as using the keyboard shortcut Q. I have a problem remembering all the different shortcuts and all the different programs. For every video editing program that I use, I have buttons that do certain things, and I have those on my Stream Deck nice and handy. So I'm just going to hit delete left, which is the same as clicking Q. And it took everything from the playhead. Let me undo that. It took everything from this point in the clip all the way to the beginning. So all the way back to the beginning of the clip, but not of the whole track. It's just looking at the clip. So I can say Q, and there it got rid of it. And I can keep on doing the same thing throughout here. So I do an S to split. I'm going to come down here. Look, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can cut and trim and do all that kind of stuff. So you may develop ways that work better for you. This is what works for me. So I'm going to Q again, and there we go. Now there's more I could edit here, but I think we've done enough to demonstrate the point. While we're looking at these icons above the top here, and the first one of these icons to look at is the select or split. You can come up here, drop this from select down to split, and now when you come over here, without moving your playhead, you can go anywhere you want on your timeline, and you see you've got those yellow dashed lines. You can just split, split, split. without moving the playhead. Wherever you put the mouse pointer, you've now got a split. And now we've got to get rid of this stuff. So we can either go over it or right click and say delete. We can also switch back to our select tool, which would also be keyboard shortcut A. We can say A and it'll switch, and we can click and hit backspace on the keyboard. That deletes. Under this menu, you also have select leftward and select rightward. Now the select leftward, if we turn that on and then we come down here and say we click here, it's going to select every clip from the point you clicked all the way back to the left. All the clips, not an individual clip. It's going to select all the clips that are to the left. And so here I clicked a few seconds into this particular clip. It selected the whole thing as part of it. And then you could do whatever you wanted to work with those clips. I don't use that option. I pretty much leave this on select and work in other ways. The next are undo and redo, and these are one action at a time. So if you don't like what you did, you hit undo. That's really, your best friend. And Control Z will also do undo as well, and that's my favorite keyboard shortcut of all time ever because it works almost universally in all Windows programs. So Control Z does some undoing. Now, if you undo too far and you need to go back, you can just hit this button right here, which is the same as clicking Control Y, and it will go back through and redo what you undoed. Then we have our split, delete left, delete right that we already talked about. The next one here is just a delete. Click on a clip and you click the little trash can, it'll make it go away. Backspace does the same thing, and the delete key on your keyboard does the same thing. A couple other nifty tools up here. Add marker. If I want to keep track of what I'm doing and what's happening next throughout this, I can click this add marker. It drops this little marker down here. I can right click on this marker and say edit marker. I can give it a name. I can say this is where the intro starts, or this is where the promo ends, or whatever. I can change the color if I want to kind of color code my markers to say different things. It's pretty handy for organization. It doesn't change anything in the video itself that you're watching. It's just on the timeline, helps you know where you are and get back to it. This next one is freeze, and this is super, super handy. When you've got a spot where your video clip is just not quite long enough, sometimes you can get away with having a freeze. You just want to freeze frame and stay there. Now, there's plenty of other uses for it. If you're doing something cool and cinematic and whatnot, sometimes you might want to freeze a frame. You got somebody in midair jumping whatever they're jumping. For me, where it comes in really handy is when I need to fill a small gap. And so wherever your playhead is, you can align it wherever you like. You hit this freeze button up here, and it's going to create looks like it was a 3-second copy that's just a freeze of that frame. It took that frame that I was on with my playhead, and it turned it into basically an image and put it on there for 3 seconds. This next button is reverse, lets you play the video in reverse. It'll come up. It takes it a few seconds depending on how long the clip is how long it's going to take it to reverse. This is something I would never play in reverse. But if you've got that great stunt where you're, skateboarding off the steps and you want to play it forward, then play it back and play it forward, that's a great place for reverse to go. I don't know what language I'm speaking there. So what we're going to do is we're going to undo so that we're not in reverse anymore. That takes us right back. Our next thing is flip or mirror, they call it. And all that does is whatever clip you have selected, flips it. And I mentioned a couple times here about clip being selected. That's one thing in almost every video editor that probably gets me at least 5 times a day, is because I will have my playhead in one position, but I'll have a clip selected somewhere else. Where my playhead is dictating the preview that I'm seeing right up here in the preview window. But I have selected this clip down here. So if I go make changes over here to the video clip, nothing's happening in my preview. I'm not seeing any difference. And that's because the preview is where the playhead is. But down here, oops, yeah, that's the clip I had selected. So that's what my edits were doing. So we're going to hit undo on that. So major tip, if you're trying to do something and it's not making sense, doesn't seem like it's applying, make sure that you have the right thing selected, that you're previewing what's selected. Then we have a rotate, which will flip you over and over and over. Gosh, I'm getting dizzy here. And if you wanted an angle that's not a complete 90 degree, you can just grab this little circle with the 2 arrows and rotate it a degree or 2 or however you want to do it. Then there's a resize. Resize allows you to crop, and it also allows you to rotate within it 1 degree at a time if you want. You can set a crop ratio too. So if you're bringing in footage that isn't what the end project is going to be, you can drop this down and say, hey, I need this to be 9:16. It's going to be a vertical. I'm going to take this horizontal and I want to make it a vertical. You can do that and it will give you the right dimensions. Then you just drag that over top of the underlying footage to where you want it to be. You wouldn't want it to be over there, so we go right there. You can also leave that in free mode, which will allow you to drag in at any dimensions that you want. I don't actually want to crop, so I'm going to hit reset on that. And if you want to sort of scrub through and see how this is looking in different places, you can do that right here on this little mini timeline. And then one of the pro paid features is remove filler words. You just click that button, it'll do the analyzing, and it's finding the ums and uhs. So it's got the video preview up here. It's got a timeline down here with the waveform of the audio. And it's done a transcript, and it will show you up here any pauses, any excessively long pauses, which of course we cut out a whole bunch of those. Repeats, it found one of those. All right, to hear what it wants to cut out, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to deselect this repeat. I'm going to say play. It's also pretty easy to. Okay, so I said that twice. It identified it. And actually, it wasn't taking quite enough, so I'll stretch that right over there. And I can say delete and gone. Now that's working on a clip-by-clip basis, so we already had this cut up a bunch, so it only worked on that one single clip that we had selected. If you're going to use that, you probably want to do that before you start cutting the whole video up into a bunch of little clips. Over here on the right, we have this handy dandy voiceover. So if you click this little microphone here, say you've got all your video in, but now it's time, you're doing a documentary and you need to narrate it. Click this little microphone. It's going to show you what your level is, your input device is. You can set the volume where you want it. And you've got some options here where you can turn on echo reduction. You know, you want to play with that and see how it works in your specific setup, depending on how loud your speakers are and what else is going on. It's a whole thing. So, try it out for yourself and see how it works. Mute project, what that will do is if you already have sound in here, say you've already put down your background music or some of your clips have some sound in them, if you hit mute, you won't have that sound coming through and getting picked up in your microphone while you're recording the voiceover and end yourself up with some weird echoes, duplicates, whatnot. And you can also select enhance voice when you're recording so that it will do a lot of the dynamic processing of your audio while you're recording it or just after you record it and before it gets applied. Once you've got all your settings the way you want them, you just click record here and start recording. So let's talk about the main track magnet. This one I have a love-hate relationship with. So the main track is this track down here. If we were to add other tracks or move things to other tracks, they would not be the main track. The main track is always this bottom video track. And the main track magnet is on by default. And I'm not sure I love that. I have mixed feelings about magnet tracks. But if we turn that main track magnet off, then we will be able to move things around and leave gaps if we wanted to. For instance, if I come down here and I wanted to get rid of part of this, so I split there, now I'm going to hit the Q to delete everything to the left of the playhead on this clip. I hit this Q and I have a gap here. Before, when we had the magnet turned on, it automatically just slid everything in this track. It just slid it right over to line up with that. That can be good or bad depending on what you're working on. If this is the only clip that you have in there, this is what you're starting with, or it's the only clip in your project, then the magnet thing is awesome. But if you've already started making edits, you've got this video here, and then over top of it, you've got some other video that sort of matches it. Maybe this is something you're talking about, and now you start clipping things in the main track, and everything starts shifting left while nothing up top is moving. Now things are all out of whack. We're going to leave that off for just a moment. The next one over here is the auto snapping. So let me zoom this in just a bit. If I take this and I say I want to move it over against this one, if I come over and I get close, it sort of grabs it, gives me that line, it snaps it in right where I want it. Great, right? Okay, let's move that. Let's take the snapping off, and now we'll click it and we'll drag it. It is not going to jump in there where it needs to go. It's going to make me do it. And it's very, very easy here. See, I did that. I went a little bit too far to the left and I said, no, can't fit. I'm going to have to put it up on another layer. And it's also very easy to not get close enough and end up with a big old gap between the two. So you got to kind of zoom in and say, is there any? Yep, see, there's a black space there and I don't want that. So that's a good reason to have on the auto snapping. Turn it off if you need to for some fine precision thing that you're trying to do. That's pretty rare, but the snapping is generally a huge help. The only time it gets in the way is if it gets a little too aggressive and there's a couple of things that it could possibly snap to and it picks not the one you want. The next option you have here is a linkage. And what linkage does, if we had some text on here, I'm just going to go up to this menu, text. I'll hit default text. I will drag it down on top. Now, if I grab this, notice how the text is going to move with it. If I grab something off the main track, the text is going to go with it. Any other video tracks don't go with it. So I don't know exactly how helpful it is. I guess if you only have a main track and then this other stuff that you want to stay stuck, it's good. Now, there's some other ways that you can make that all stay together, and we'll get to those. I just want to get through this menu so we understand everything is down here. The next thing we have is preview axis. And if we turn this on, now instead of the preview being tied to whatever is under the playhead, wherever your mouse is, you get this yellow line and you're scrubbing through and seeing what's going on without moving the playhead. Now you can still do other things. You can still select and you can still edit, shortening, trimming things up and cut. It doesn't prevent you from doing other things, but it means wherever your mouse is, that's what you're going to be seeing a preview of. Not necessarily where the playhead is. It's going to be based on where your mouse is on this timeline. Zoom to fit timeline. So we want to make sure this whole timeline fits in our window here. We just click this button and now it shrunk everything up so that we can see the whole length of the project. This is really handy if you're editing and you do things like me and you end up with, say, these little things off to the right that aren't going to make it into the project, but you're sort of saving them kind of because maybe until the very end you decide not, and you look and you think, okay, yep, project's ready, and you export it and then you find out that holy crap, you've got 5 minutes of a black screen and then this one little clip over at the end that you completely forgot to delete. I mean, it's easy enough to fix, but save yourself the hassle if you just hit this little button right here, bring it all in, you go, oh, that little fella's out there, I need to get rid of him. This, of course, is the zoom slider for the timeline, and we've already talked about that. Zoom in, zoom out. Down here on the tracks, you have a lock on every track. So what you can do there is if you lock the track, and it gives you this nice these lines to tell you it's locked. But now anything you do, for instance, if you come here and you did a split all, which would mean put a split in every clip that's under this playhead. If you did something like that, it won't apply to that track that's locked. Or other edits that you're making to the whole thing, it's going to say, nope, I'm going to leave that one alone. There's a little eyeball, as is the case in just about everything. Click the eyeball and it will hide it. It hides it from the preview. It'll still be on your timeline. The track will still be there. It'll be really darkened out so you can tell it's there, but you're not doing anything with it. Last but not least here is the mute. So click that little speaker icon and that will mute that track. Now these settings here are for the entire track, not just one clip. So this will lock this entire track no matter how many clips you have on it. The eyeball will make it invisible. Any clips that you would have on that same track, you're not going to see them. And same for the mute. When it comes to organizing your tracks, CapCut is pretty much going to handle this for you. It's going to add tracks as you add things, and it's going to remove tracks as it sees that they are not needed. So this is the only thing I have on this particular track right now. If I drag it up here, then that track just goes away. If I say, well, shoot, I want this clip here layered between these two, I can do that. I just drag it over until I get that little green horizontal bar. Pops up right between the two and drop it in. I go, well, now I want this above now. Okay, I can drag it up, get that green bar, drop it in there. If you want to zoom in on something here on your preview, you can just click this little magnifying glass and drag that. Woo! That's too much. That's too much. In or out and get where you need to be. You can also click here on the ratio and change the dimensions, the aspect ratio of the project. And then this little fella here gets you a full screen preview. Just below the preview, it's showing you where the playhead is. That's in green. That's in hours, minutes, seconds, and then frames. This text in white, or these numbers in white, that's the total project length. So that's telling you where the end of the project is. So this is the basic layout of the timeline and the preview window. If you don't have CapCut yet, there's a link in the description. It is an affiliate link, which means I may receive a small commission if you end up purchasing something. You don't have to. Hey, go try the free. It might do everything you need. And I certainly appreciate it when folks do use my affiliate links. If you want to keep going exploring CapCut with me, watch this video right here.